Alright, so in this video we're going to sew the medium size That's What You Got Me gift bag. So what I have cut out for this one, the pattern calls for fusible fleece to be fused to the exterior size of the medium and large. There are countless different options of interfacing that you could use on this. So use whatever you think would be right. I call for fusible fleece because it should add sturdiness to the gift bag and make it so that it's not just like floppy. I am foregoing using any interfacing, and I do have a small little notation about this in the pattern. I'm just using heavier fabrics. So this fabric is called Theratex, and it is from Fabric Therapy. I've linked that in the pattern, and I'll also link it in the description below. But it's like a, I don't know, it's a silky smooth something. I don't even know how to describe it. It's something different that I've not seen before. But it can hold its own shape. This small size gift bag was made from Theratex. So it's definitely sturdy. So we're using that for the exterior, and then for the lining I'm using waterproof canvas. So the combination of the two really gives a nice sturdy bag. And then of course I cut my Decoville pieces as indicated in the pattern, and I've already gone ahead and I fused the top stabilizer to the exterior, and this is 1/2 inch down from the top and centered from left to right. So on this bag, to center this, it's 2.5 inches from each side. All right, so let's just get started sewing. So first we're going to place the two exterior pieces right sides together. The right side is the pretty side, or the side with the pattern on it. If you're using solid colored fabric, you might not be able to tell right side from wrong side, and if you can't tell, nobody else will either. So frankly, that's how I feel about that. All right, so we're just going to clip the bottom, and we are going to sew this using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And I like to trim all my threads as I go. The snips I'm using today are ergonomic. I don't remember the actual name of them, but they're ergonomic snips from Fabric Therapy. This video is not sponsored by Fabric Therapy. I did buy all of this. Okay, so now we're going to press this bottom seam open and nice and flat. All right, so once that bottom seam is pressed open, you're going to take your piece of bottom stabilizer, and I'm just going to kind of fold it in half to mark where the center is, and then you'll center it over that bottom seam, centered from side to side as well as this way. So if you fold it in half, that crease will fall right along the seam, and I'm going to fuse this in place. All right, so the stabilizer is fused in place. And then if you wanted to, at this point, you could top stitch on either side of the seam along the bottom, just for decorative purposes, and it will also help hold that stabilizer in place, but that is not necessary. So totally optional, and I'm going to skip it. All right, so now I need to organize my clips better. Oh, one of my testers actually said the small size gift bag is kind of perfect for holding clips, and I might make one and leave the handles off for that purpose. So now you want to match the sides up, right sides together again, and clip them along both sides. Dang it. with the stabilizer attached, it's a little tricky because the bottom doesn't just fold in half. But Alright, now we want to sew along both of these sides using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And you want to make sure that you backstitch well at the start and stop of each seam. And I'd like to point out that although I'm using an industrial sewing machine, this can absolutely be sewn on any regular home sewing machine as well. And it's super beginner friendly. So Alright, now we're going to trim these seam allowances down to about 1/8 of an inch. And I just kind of eyeball it. If it's a little bit more, that's fine. Just don't get too close to the stitches. Alright, now we're going to box the bottom corners. So to do this, you will bring the two edges of that cutout square together, and you're matching the side seam with the bottom seam. And then I'm just going to place some clips on there, and I'll do that on the other side as well. And then we'll sew those together also using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So if your seam allowances are not precise in sewing the bottom and sides, then the corners might not seem to box up quite perfectly. So that would be an issue with seam allowance. Alright, so now we're just going to sew this using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Alright, and throughout this process, you're not sewing through that bottom stabilizer at all, just next to it. Alright, and then we're going to go ahead and trim those seam allowances down to about 1/4 of an inch or so. All right, now we can set the exterior aside. We will take our lining pieces. Take the lining pieces and place them right sides together. And this time we're going to clip around both sides and the bottom. And when we sew the bottom, we're actually going to leave a turning hole to turn the finished bag right side out. So you want to make sure that's at least 3 inches wide. You can go ahead and mark that along this bottom seam now if you want, just with a pen or whatever you use to mark your fabric with. And this is the medium size. You can make it a little bit wider than 3 inches if you want. You have a little more wiggle room. So mark that hole as wide as you want it, but not too wide, because you need to make sure that you have room here to box the corners. All right, so we're going to sew this together. You'll start at the top with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then you'll increase your seam to 5/8 of an inch. So, and this will help the lining to fit inside of the exterior more nicely. So then the bottom seam will be 5/8 of an inch. And make sure that you backstitch well on that seam. So here I started at the bottom, so I'm starting at a 5/8 inch seam allowance, and then I'll make sure that when I get to the top, I've tapered back out to 1/2 inch. All right, now I'm going to trim all of these seam allowances down except for along the opening. So I just will trim and then curve it out at that opening to keep the full seam allowance there. And that makes it easier to sew the hole closed when you're finished. All right, now we're going to box the bottom corners. So you will pull the sides apart and match the bottom seam to the side seam. I'm just going to do this on both of the corners. And then we're going to sew that corner using a 5/8 inch seam allowance. And then we'll repeat that on the other corner. Alright, we'll trim these seam allowances down. Alright, now I'm going to turn the lining so that it's right side out. And I'm just kind of poking the holes or the corners out, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Alright, and then we're going to place the lining inside of the exterior right sides together. And you'll notice at this point that the exterior is considerably longer than the lining, and that is correct. That's how it should be. So go ahead now and just match up your side seams. And clip those together. And then you're just going to clip together the rest of the way around the top. All right, now we're going to sew that seam, or sew the top together using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. All right, now we're going to trim that seam allowance down also to about 1/8 of an inch. All right, and then we're going to turn this right side out through the hole in the bottom. Whenever I get to this point, I wish I left a bigger hole because I don't even think that is 3 inches. But whatever. And you want to push the bottom corners out, which the stabilizer should help that to happen easily. All right, and then we're going to push the lining down inside of the exterior, and the top portion of the exterior that has the Decovil Heavy adhered to it, or the top stabilizer piece, will also flip inside of the bag, and that should happen easily because of the stabilizer being there. See how easily that folds right down inside. So then I'm just going to go press the top seam of this bag all the way around. All right, now we are going to top stitch, and I top stitch with my bags right side out, or inside out. So I'm just going to turn the bag inside out. All right, and my first line of top stitching is going to be 1 inch down from the top. So I like to start near the side seam. If you don't have a 1 inch mark on your sewing machine, measure it and place a piece of tape there. And that will help you to keep your top stitching nice and even. I like to use washi tape or masking tape for that. All right, and then there's going to be a second line of top stitching that will be 1/8 of an inch from the top edge. All right, once you have that top stitched all the way around, both lines of top stitching, you can turn this back right side out. And we're going to top stitch the lining closed. All right, which to do that, you are going to turn the seam allowance inside along the opening and just kind of fold it together like this. You can place a few clips on here to hold that together, and then we're just going to edge stitch the hole closed, which would be 1/8 of an inch or even less if you can neatly sew closer to the edge, just enough to sew it closed, or you can hand stitch it closed. I don't prefer to hand sew anything. All right, now we're going to fold this lining sides together at each of the top 4 corners. So it's right at the edge of that stabilizer piece, the top stabilizer. So just fold that lining sides together, and we're going to top stitch from the top down to this lower line of top stitching using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I'm just going to sew all the way and then back stitch all the way. And then I'll repeat that at each of the 4 top corners. So it's really easy to feel where that piece of top stabilizer is and to just fold it together, right sides together at that point. I'm sorry, lining side together. Just make sure that the top is matched up evenly before you sew. And you can use clips or pins on this as well if you prefer. With the stabilizer in there, it really does make it effortless. All right, and then the last one. All right, now I'm going to go to my sewing machine, or go to my ironing board. Make sure my lining is pressed down inside the bag really nice. And I'm just going to iron it at each of the 4 edges, pushing the sides in like this to make it have that classic gift bag shape. So you'll crease here, 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 and here. All right, so I've pressed all of the sides so that it has the nice gift bag shape. We're going to go ahead and install our eyelets. So what we're going to do is, using a ruler and any marking tool, we're going to measure on the medium size 1.5 inches in from the edge and 1/2 inch down from the top, and make a mark. Just from moremeknow.com. And they're meant for marking leather, I believe, but we're going to be punching these holes out, so it works well for this. And it shows up on my black fabric. So 1.5 inches in from the side and 1/2 inch down from the top. And I'm just going to mark all 4 of these holes. And then I have a leather hole punch, which is what I would recommend to use to punch the holes. And I somehow lost it in the last half hour. So we're going to improvise. And I think that I can punch the holes with the eyelet tool on my press. So we're going to give that a try. I really don't see my hole punch anywhere. All right, so we're just going to go for this and hope that it works. I'm going to line up the bottom part on my tool set with the part where I want the hole. It pops a hole in there, so hopefully it works. I recommend using an actual hole punch for this. If anybody knows where I might have put mine, let me know, because I cannot find it. Alright, and then I have 1/4 inch eyelets. So you'll want to use whatever size fits your press, or you can buy pliers. There are Dritz pliers at Jo-Ann Fabrics sells Dritz brand pliers, and I'm sure they're everywhere else too, that you can use to install eyelets. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and insert the eyelets into the holes as best we can. And I am not going to start my next video until I find my hole puncher. That has to be in this room somewhere. Like, I literally, to start this video, moved it off of my sewing machine. It was sitting here, and I moved it. Where could it have gone? Like, where did I put that? It really has to be somewhere right in here, and I don't see it anywhere. Like, it just got up and walked away. Alright, so I'm going to use my tool to set these eyelets. I think I did that the wrong way. I did. This is all going wrong. Just use the tool to get all of the eyelets set. And then if you have any extra Decovil or anything out of the back, you can trim that off. Oh, and also before setting the eyelets, if you choose, you can use fray check around the holes to prevent that from fraying at all. Alright, so once all of the eyelets are set in place, we will take the ribbon, which should have been cut already. For the medium, we're going to cut 2 16-inch lengths of ribbon. Ideally, this would have been cut at the beginning before you started sewing, but I didn't do it. this is 3/8 of an inch ribbon. I also used 1/4 inch ribbon on the size small, and that was fine. So really whatever you have, if you want to use cording, that would work well. All right, and then you're just going to feed the ribbon, each end of the ribbon, through one end, or one of the holes. I pull it all the way to the inside, like this. And then I'm actually going to tie it together, and that way you don't have to worry about the knots pulling out. All right, and then on the end of your ribbon, because it will continue to fray, you'll want to either use Fray Check, or you can heat seal that with a lighter. So it will be like this. And let's just go ahead and tie the other one in, and then this gift bag, the medium size gift bag, is finished. All right, I like to slide the ribbon so that the knot is behind one of the eyelets. And then that's it. So now the medium size is finished, and these can be reused for years and years to come. You could also use Decovil Light in this. I think that would work well, especially if you were using woven exterior. But that would really hold its shape nicely. So medium is finished, and let's compare that with the small. So here's the small and medium sizes together. So the medium is quite a bit larger. So let me know what you think. Drop a comment, give me a follow. You can find the pattern on my website, and all of the pertinent information is linked down below. Thanks for watching.